Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the How to Master Networking with Deverellsmith and the Land Collective. So just a bit about Deverellsmith for those who don't know us. So we're a global property recruitment, talent advisory and executive search business. And we work across the whole property life cycle. So if you're looking for development, sales, construction, asset management, anything, we're here to help you with that next step of your career. And now I'm going to hand over to our very, very experienced panel who are going to here to tell you their advice on how to master networking. So over to Sarah.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for coming and for spending your evening here with us. We've got a great panel lined up today. So some of you are already part of the Land Collective network. Some of you might be new. So for those of you who are new, show of hands, this is your first event, something like that. Fab. Okay, so quickly, the Land Collective was an organization that supports young people like yourselves to get into the property and built environment sector. So we run events like this throughout the year, but we also do things like employability programs and other ways just for you to meet peers and like-minded people across the industry. We also connect you with lots of different employers as well. But today we are here to learn about all things networking. And to be honest, you seem to be quite good at it already, considering all the chatting you've been doing over the food and things. But one by one, I just thought it would be good for you to get introduced. So Paul, do you want to start with you?
Yeah, sure. How's everyone feeling today, by the way? That sounded a bit dull. I'll ask again. How's everyone feeling today? Okay, that's better. So my name is Paul Modu. I've been in the industry for a decade. Still feel quite young, but yeah, 10 years is a long time. I work for a company called Knight Frank. We are a property consultancy, 127, 28-year-old business. I specialize in commercial property. And for anyone who doesn't know what commercial property is, it's buildings which don't have tenants, which are people. So it's underlying to businesses. So I work across offices, industrial, retail, student, hospitality. So it's a broad range. It's an area of the business which is growing significantly. And I'm here to talk about, the power of networking. So looking forward to it.
Hi, I'm Debra Yudolph. I run a consultancy business. There's 18 people, and we specialise in advising developers and investors, mainly on residential, so generally on people's homes, about how places are designed so that they run efficiently and that they're great places to be. So we call it placekeeping. So we look at the designs, what it's going to cost to live there, and what the landscaping's like, and who's going to look after it, but also to create a place that people love being in. And we do we work across both affordable housing and private housing, and so we work across every sort of price range, I suppose. And my background is I did used to work for a big corporate doing property management. So I didn't go to university. I left school at 16, but I started off as a property manager and worked my way up. So I'm quite unusual in the industry in a way, because I've sort of got to where I am in a slightly different route.
Hello, I'm Tommy. I work for Deverellsmith. I've got, I'm old, 16 years recruitment experience now in the property industry. I actually got chucked out of college and didn't know what I wanted to do. Went into a sales job and then ended up in recruitment. So really looking forward to speaking to you all today about the event.
Fab. And I mean, we've all had to network a lot across our careers in general, but how would you actually define networking? Like, what does it actually mean to you? Because I think lots of people have lots of different definitions. For some people, it's just, oh, I'm just getting to know people, making friends. For others, it's a lot more transactional. So starting with you, Tommy, what do you think? What's networking for you?
What is networking to me? Networking to me is essentially building relationships. So I was going to tell a story about a client that we invited to a networking event. We host loads of events at Deverellsmith. We had an event at Fulham. One of my colleagues phoned up a gentleman called Dan to essentially invite him to an event. We end up going on their golf day, and Dan has to come to this event today. You want to put your hand up, Dan, so everyone can see? Dan's now one of our biggest clients, and that started from networking. I would not have picked up the phone, or my team would not have picked up the phone if we didn't have anything to talk about from a networking perspective. So that's essentially what it is. It's just about building relationships and kind of putting yourself out there and finding some common ground with someone and being your authentic self.
So, I mean, I agree with all of that, but I also see it as, I mean, I think it's really, we'll talk about this later, in more depth, but I think it's really critical for people's careers that you build your own network, because one of the benefits of it is that you create a support system for yourself that helps you in your career. So to find people who become part of your network, it's the thing that I think will enable you to share your problems, talk about your career. So it's about for me, it's about your profile amongst your peers and then amongst other people in the industry. And it is about face-to-face. It's not about just going to a drinks party and having a chat, but it's about being quite strategic in how you network and understanding the benefit of it, and also taking advantage of it. So it's really easy to meet people and then never bother again, but it is that thing, like a couple of people here just went, oh, can we go on your LinkedIn? Like, it's about making an effort to make connections that not are only useful to you or where you could be useful to somewhere else, but you're creating a group of people that will serve you really well through your career as a support network.
Yeah, I agree with both points. Tommy mentioned it's all about building relationships. I think there's one word I would use in addition to all of what's been said. It's community. Often I find the word networking to feel quite transactional. And I'm here to say it's not about being transactional. It's about being genuine. It's about being authentic. And all about building community. All of you are all here today to listen to us, to kind of foster a connection and to hopefully one day build a relationship with many of us on the panel. There's also another opportunity, which is if you don't know every single person in this room, then take this opportunity to know every single person in this room. You don't know who you're going to be in 2, 3, 4, 5 years' time. Something which I did when I was 22 is kind of build a commercial awareness platform. It was myself and 5 other friends. And at 22, 23, we didn't know too much about where life is going to take us, but we wanted to kind of share that learning and development journey. And it's actually how I know Sarah across that journey as well. And there was many of us who were, we used to host how to invest, get on the property ladder, careers spanning between property, finance, and tech. And, we used to have so many people, and that's how actually I was able to build a community. So I'm glad that, 10 years on in my career, there are many people who are doing many great things, and I'm able to call upon them because, we spent a lot of time learning and developing. So in upshot, what I'm trying to say is, there's us on the panel, but also there's the opportunity to meet and speak with other people here, and to kind of foster that genuine connection.
Thanks, Paul, for that. And actually, just going on from what you just said, can you talk a little bit about your career journey? Because you started at Knight Frank when you were a grad, I think, or even an intern, and now you're in a completely different department that's not known to many at all in the grand scheme of things. So can you talk a little bit about your journey and the role networking had to play in that?
Sure. Okay, I'll give a bit of a background. So I joined Knight Frank when I was 21 years of age. I must say at the time, while I knew a bit about property, where I specialize today is commercial real estate, which is an area of the industry which I still think, particularly amongst young people, is not as known as what we see on a day to day. So, you know, you see your estate agents, the residential space. It's an area which probably gets more traction than commercial, but the reality is we're surrounded by commercial real estate, and I think there's a big role for professionals to kind of demystify what that is. So whether it's one day the offices you end up working in, your weekly shop, your supermarkets that you go to, I think I was saying earlier, your nail shops, it's all a form of commercial real estate. It's a different use class. So yeah, I joined Knight Frank when I was 21. I studied economics for my university degree. A year in, I decided to do a master's in international real estate, and subsequently I went on to do the graduate scheme. So my route is one of many routes. I went obviously the academic route, but then subsequently I am qualified as a chartered surveyor, which comprises of 2 years relevant experience, and my time, the graduate scheme allowed me to rotate across different functions of the business. The power of networking and relationships. I made myself a nuisance, and I mean that in the kindest possible way. I made sure that people knew who I was when I was navigating the space, right from the very top. In my first probably 2 to 3 weeks of joining Knight Frank, I actually emailed the CEO at the time. Well, he replied to me within an hour, so I was quite happy actually. But what I ended up doing is I was on his radar, so he knew exactly who I was. He was someone who actually remembered everyone's name, and that's an amazing skill to have. So we ended up, you know, every time he walks past, he will say hello, we'll talk about life, even if it's 2 minutes. And we built that. So that 2 minutes, every few days or every week, I got to see him. And that spanned on for 7, 8 years. It kind of led to a position where, you know, I was able to have conversations about my career, my development, and where I think I could grow and one day thrive in. It kind of led to where I am today, which is I love, of course, working with people. Where I work in particular is with investors who are looking to buy and sell commercial real estate. It's investors with very deep pockets. And I wanted to kind of be in that space where I can help and also educate. I don't mean that from a arrogant way, but you know, it's an area which more and more people are looking to kind of develop as well. So yeah, building relationships, one with the individuals at the very top, the connections I forged, which I mentioned earlier, with the community I built, but also spending a lot of time going to industry events. That was actually really critical for me. While many others would finish their day job and go home, I spent a lot of time going to many of the events hosted by our counterparts, but also by ourselves. So that was really useful in my development.
Thank you for that. And Debra, that's actually a good takeaway from that. And what would you recommend in terms of how our audience can stay afloat with what's actually happening in the industry, and how important is that as well to networking?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, the best people in the industry are the people that are passionate about it. I think that's true of what anybody does. So, I mean, the few people that I've spoken to here have, you know, it's been amazing because there's a real passion. So I think taking a genuine interest in real estate broadly, I mean, it's so broad, isn't it? You know, whether it is an office building going up or whether it's regeneration of a housing estate or new home. So I think that you know, reading the paper, you know, reading online, looking at stories. I think now is a really interesting time because Labour government have come in and they're putting housing at the front of their policies. So it's very accessible to understand what's going on in the industry to a certain extent. So I think that for us, when we're recruiting, whether it's to give someone work experience or an intern or whatever, I think having a genuine interest in property, real estate, whatever you want to call it, is really important. And I think that because it's all very public, you know, we can see it around us, it's probably easier to find out about than a lot of other industries. If you think, I don't know, about accountancy, or, I mean, it'd be quite difficult, wouldn't it, to sort of, have an interesting, well, I'm sure it's very interesting being an accountant, but it's quite easy to engage with people in the real estate industry if you're genuinely interested in what's going on in the world. So I think that, and I know it's difficult to go to events, but it's not just events. It's, there's webinars, there's, I mean, you are much more probably au fait with it than me, but, there's lots of things you can do that isn't face-to-face in person. You can do things online, but there is a lot to be said for meeting people in person and having a conversation. And I think that that is always the most difficult thing to do. But I think that if you walk into a room and you have a passion for what you're interested in, and you can be as you say, you come as yourself, people will always be happy to talk to you. And it is difficult to have a conversation with a stranger, but you have to remember that everyone feels the same. And, it doesn't matter. I've been doing this for years. It's still intimidating. Sitting here is intimidating. Talking to you is intimidating. So I think that if you do try to educate yourselves in a day-to-day way about what's going on in the industry, it does really go a long way to make you feel more confident to engage in a conversation, as with someone that might be way more senior than you, but you can still engage with them and be remembered, which is I think that thing about being memorable in a networking situation is a really, really important thing, because we can all be memorable. I've always liked not being the same as everybody else, and you have to embrace that. And and it doesn't matter if you don't feel equal to the CEO, but you need to have the confidence to have a conversation with whoever it is. And I think having a knowledge really can help you with that confidence.
That's really great advice. And I mean, just off of that shameless plug, if you don't follow us on Instagram, I don't know what you're doing. We post a lot of commercial awareness bits on our Instagram and our TikTok. So if you want to keep afloat as to what's going on in the industry, subscribe there. There's also a website. Well, it's not really a website. It's a publication called BE News. And they are great because they are free. So you just need to enter your email and you can see what's actually happening in the industry. So I'd definitely sign up to get those updates.
And there's another one called BTR News, if you're interested in Build to Rent, which you probably don't know what it is, but or you might do. But that's also free, but it has a lot of news about all sorts of things, but often deals that are being done. I think just having knowing a few businesses' names and understanding what, it just helps, gives you more confidence to engage in a conversation about the industry.
Further to the point as well, I think everyone was in your position at one point as well, which I think is really important. Everyone was your age, going up to people in our situations and trying to find common ground. I always talk about people finding their own USP, and being your authentic self is super, super important. If someone had come up to me today, I was saying about this earlier, I had posted something on LinkedIn earlier about running. If anyone done research, come up and talked about me running, I'll talk their hind legs off about running, about marathons and stuff like that, and you'd get me engaged, and then I'll start asking questions about yourself, and then naturally you'll be talking to someone, and it's still almost finding that common ground with someone. It's really important.
Definitely. And just on that, so I've identified you as the recruiter in the room. That's what I'm telling everybody.
Oh, great.
So in terms of building relationships with people, especially given everyone's kind of age, kind of 16 plus, 16 to like 18, 19, some slightly older, what advice would you have for them in terms of building relationships with recruiters, hiring managers, making themselves memorable?
So we do something where we literally post out job adverts, either via LinkedIn or job ads. You've seen them on the job boards, right? Indeed, Total Jobs, all the bits. Most recruiters will do that. Can I tell you, this week, I can't remember one person following up a job ad application. And what I mean by that is following up saying, hi, my name's Tommy. I've sent my CV over to you. Could I have a conversation about my profile? If someone done that now, I honestly would take the time to have a conversation with someone. because bear in mind, recruiters will sometimes see loads of applications and CVs. They're human too, right? And they've got loads of things going on. If you haven't got the relevant experience, they might not be able to get back to you in time, which isn't right, but that's the reality of it. If someone phoned up and chased, that will be something that will stand you out from the crowd instantly, because that's something people don't do anymore. And that's maybe more of an old school kind of mentality and approach. But I got my job, my second recruitment job. I was in the pub with one of my friends. He went for a recruitment interview, and I said, "Oh, where did you go?" He said, "Oh, it's in this company called ICS, and it's based in Bow." I was like, "Oh, I was still at my mum's at the time." I thought, "Well, that actually works that for me, because I could literally get there quite early." "What is it, property?" "I used to do estate agency." I was like, "Fine." He said, "You going to take the job?" He said, "No." I said, "Okay." He said, "I'm going to tell him tomorrow." I phoned the person the next day and basically said, "Hi, I know you met Sonny yesterday. Just to let you know, he doesn't want the job. I do. Let me tell you about myself." And I got the job, and she was like, "Who is this guy? He's 23 years old, and he's actually done that." But that's what I did, and that's how I got my job, and that's how I started my career in property recruitment. And I was there for 7.5 years, and worked my way up from the bottom all the way to the top. But I guarantee you no one else would go and do that. So that's the kind of way that I kind of stood out and had my USP. And I was working in markets where it was kind of prime central London, and it was almost like I had to be the person who then had the best product. So people know who I was, because I didn't sound like everyone else. But what I did have was the best product, and that in terms of the best candidates, and made sure I got myself in front of the right people. So that's kind of how I started my journey.
That's really interesting, and I love that you did that, actually. But in terms of a common thread that I've been hearing with all of you is the power of confidence. So maybe if you're a bit on the more introverted, more shy side, how do you navigate networking events? Because, I mean, believe it or not, I'm an introvert. Like, when I get home, I'm probably going to go under the covers and not come out for a good day or two. But how would you navigate that if you're someone that's painfully shy, really introverted? Because it can be really intimidating, as you said, Debra, earlier. So any advice?
Ask questions. Let them talk. So ask questions, find out stuff, ask questions to people. Then you don't have to talk as much. And people tend to want to talk about themselves. That would be my bit of advice on that.
I think, find a friend. So, take someone along with you, but don't just stand together and talk to each other all night, because then, you may as well just go to the pub together. So I think that there is sort of a sense of sort of safety in numbers in a way. So that's why building your network initially is really important, because then you have people to then go out and network with other people. I think really trying to remind yourself that everyone feels the same. No one likes to walk into a room full of strangers. No one likes just going up to someone and introducing themselves. It is really difficult. It doesn't get any easier. Everyone thinks I love it, and I don't. So I think you just have to just make, sometimes you just have to, make yourself do things that are uncomfortable. I don't know, I worked in retail for a while. So I also think that if you can put yourself in a situation where you're having to talk to strangers, it's really, I think retail is a really, really good, I think everyone should work in retail for a period in their life, or work in a restaurant, because you have to learn to engage with people who you don't know, who aren't necessarily being, sometimes they're lovely and sometimes they're not. I have a 16-year-old daughter, and she's currently working, she's just finished her GCSEs, but she's working in the Mind shop in Putney, and she's quite she's neurodiverse, and she's having to, work with the people who work in the shop, but also the customers are coming in. And it's been really interesting to see a change in her confidence, because she's having to engage with people that she would normally find really difficult to do, and she's actually really loving it. So it's a small thing, but I think that doing charity work or volunteering, or one, it's great for your CV, but I think it also enables you to put yourself into an environment where you might feel slightly uncomfortable, but those skills that you learn will stand you in really good stead through your career. And I mean, when I was young, I went and did some work for Centrepoint, and it was probably one of the most intimidating things I've ever done, because it was in a homeless hostel, and the people there didn't probably really want to talk to me, and probably perceive me to be, someone who was just sort of interfering in a way. It was really, really difficult. But I think that those things where where you come into contact with people that you don't know, I mean, it's talking to someone on the bus, or it does. If you can strike up a conversation with someone, when you need to strike up a conversation with someone, it just becomes much easier.
Anything to add?
So the question being, for someone who's introverted, how do you act? One of the things which I did certainly when I started my career was, I would describe myself as an ambivert. Is it like extrovert? Yeah. And, presenting and public speaking was something which I knew was important, but also I was fearful. And if you remember when you were young, the idea that eating your vegetables, you don't want to eat it, but also it's pretty healthy. I felt that public speaking and presenting was important. Didn't really like the feeling I got from being nervous, but I knew I had to do it anyway. And so I had to act. I had to put myself in a role which put me in places where I can say, done this for 30 minutes, done this for an hour. After I'm like, that's over, and go home. But over time, actually, I started to get more comfortable and more used to the idea of speaking to people and presenting. And I think, most importantly, when we strip out the word public, what are we doing? We're speaking. We spend most of our lives speaking and conversing with each other. I think we actually make it pretty complicated sometimes. Even the word networking, it's like, what is it when we break it down? It's speaking to people. And so I think we need to also just demystify it. It's not complicated. We spend more time probably speaking on our phones or with people than any form of activity during the day. Of course, separately, speaking to strangers, it's being able to say, we're all here for similar reasons. We're all, I guess, like-minded. We all spent our Wednesday evenings here. So there are some common grounds as well, that we probably have similar nervousness and apprehensions about speaking with strangers. But I think collectively you're all here for similar reasons. And I think that's something to certainly take home with. So yeah, I hope it's a useful answer. If you're not into acting, probably start thinking about it. Who knows, we might see you on the screens.
Yeah.
You mentioned you're an introvert. How have you found doing this then? Because I'm terrified.
Yeah, pretty much fake it till you make it. I think it's good advice there. I was painfully shy throughout school, throughout college, but I think one kind of hack that I had is I have to do something really uncomfortable at least once a week. Really uncomfortable that I'll probably cringe later on, that kind of thing. Doing panel discussions is probably one of those things. But also maybe, striking up a conversation with someone on public transport, or the weather seems to be a good conversation starter for things. So things like, the weather's a bit crap, isn't it? Everyone can agree with that. So just putting yourself in uncomfortable situations really, really helps with your confidence, I think, especially when it comes to meeting new people, connecting. And sometimes, I've met really kind of senior people in the industry and I've been super intimidated. And then you strike up a conversation, they're talking about, oh yeah, their baby was just sick on them this morning or something like that. And it's just, you remember that they're human. So I think it's just getting back to that basic. Just remember, everyone's human, everyone has stuff going on. And we're just doing that at the end of the day.
Let me also add to that. I think there's a tendency where we assume we're not good at something. If we treat it as a muscle where, you do that often, suddenly it'll be something, you have muscle memory, you've done this before. So a lot of it actually is not that you are shy, it's an untrained muscle. You've never done it before. But I promise you, do it, if you practice and do it over time, it'll be one of those qualities which will become second nature to you. So I think that's also something to differentiate as well, that do it multiple times, it becomes pretty normal.
And also, like, set yourself silly challenges, you know. I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Because if you go to a party, you don't, you know, you're not at home getting ready and thinking, oh, God, I've got to go to a party. I'm going to have to talk to people. It's going to be really awful and no one's going to want to talk to me. Like, you just sort of enter into it in, like, a different way. And I think that you're right about labelling this as networking and, you know, that you sort of, it's baby steps and going home going, wow, you know, I spoke to 3 people tonight and I got there, you know, that it is about building your network and then and also finding your own tricks to get over your fears, I suppose. So you'll all have your own thing. One of my friends worked for the BBC and her thing was, because it was a very male-dominated world that she was in, that she used to read the sports paper bit in the paper or you know, it was a while ago, so she was reading the paper, on a Sunday. And so when she went in, she could have a bit of football chat, and it gave her more confidence to sort of, because she'd walk in and all the guys, I'm really stereotyping, but this does happen, were all chatting about football, and she couldn't join in, and she sort of found herself going, oh, would anyone like a coffee? And sort of reverting to this role. And so she thought, well, I'm just going to join in. So you can create like little tricks. And that's the thing about knowing a bit about the industry, where say, oh, did you see the news about such and such? That I think if you come with a little something that makes you feel better, it can go a really long way.
Yeah.
That Harry Kane ain't, no, I'm joking.
We can all talk about football this week.
And I guess you mentioned it earlier, Debra, about talking about, you know, online events as well as kind of in-person things. And I mean, I'd like to say property is quite an old school traditional industry. So I'd love for you to kind of talk a little bit about the power of connecting in person. I mean, online opportunities are always there, they're always great, but I think within this industry, especially to build those relationships properly, it really does help to connect in person. So kind of how have you found that difference over your terms of your career?
I mean, obviously, when I started, I was so old that that the only way to actually connect with anyone was in person. But I recognise that it's become more difficult because we're so used to just doing everything online, and so it's actually, I think, it's a bit like when you start school, isn't it? You know, that you're in a room full of people and you're sussing everyone out and working out who's going to be your friend, and that person probably ends up not being your friend, but you think that you've got a connection with them. It's you know, that room full of strangers starts really early on in your life. So I think that that it's, I mean, depending where, you know, what stage you are, you need to use, you know, I mean, what you're doing is amazing. So you need to take every opportunity to be in a room full of people where you can meet someone who, you know, might never see them again, but so you're building a network. And I think that it is a mix of, you know, it's not all in person because that's just impossible. But I spoke once and it was, the topic was building your personal profile, which I was like, oh, that's you know, what do you say about that? But I think that every interaction you have, in a way, you're building your personal profile. And I think that being, whether it's online or in person, trying to be your authentic self, which has been said a lot, which I know sounds really obvious, but it's actually, I think, quite difficult to do in reality when you work or you're in an organisation where culturally you might not necessarily feel that you fit in. It is difficult when you're starting your career to feel that you can be your authentic self, but I think it's really important. So I think it's about, I don't know if I'm really answering the question, but I think it's about recognising the impact of the face-to-face contact. And exactly, you know, what you did was amazing because you became memorable and you had the confidence. I mean, it took a lot of confidence to email you know, brilliant, email the CEO, but also you, even if you hadn't emailed him or her, you you found a way of engaging, and I think that that's the thing. It might just be a 2-minute conversation with someone, but you will be remembered for making the effort. And also just be brave, you know. I mean, sometimes you just have to sort of think, I was going to swear, but what what have you got to lose? Do you know what I mean? It's like, really, you know, you put yourself out there a bit. I mean, it is difficult. I was really shy when I was young. Everyone thinks I'm an extrovert, and I'm not. But you put yourself out there. What's the you know? I feel like I'm talking to my daughter. What's the worst that can happen? Do you know what I mean? That you get rebuffed, and you pick yourself up, and you build resilience. And that's also a really good thing to do. So sometimes you have to have that inner conversation with yourself, which is like, I'm just going to go and talk to them. And, you know, and if they're horrible, more for them.
Yeah. And I think, conscious of time.
May I make a point, by the way?
Go on.
I think we're making a huge assumption here. We might be talking to a very confident bunch here.
Yeah.
So we're probably projecting some of our
It is.
Yeah.
as well. But like, I just want to put out there, because when I look at, and I don't mean to completely characterize a whole generation, but when I think of Gen Z, I think bold, I think brave, I think confident. So forgive us maybe if we're talking and projecting a little bit, because I'm sure many of you will say, well, you're not talking about me, because I'm all about confidence. And I see a couple people smiling as well, because they probably know that actually they know I'm on the right line here. So
I thought that when I was looking out, I was thinking, you're probably all thinking, what are they talking about? We love it, you know, we love walking to a room full of but how many people does this, I mean, you know, how many people were worried about coming tonight and worried, or, you know, how many, I mean, it would be interesting, you know, are we talking to, are we saying things that you can relate to, or I mean, then, you know, the world is made up of, you know, all types of people. So, I mean, the people I spoke to earlier didn't seem to find this difficult. I don't know. Show your hands if you know. Yeah.
Awesome.
For everyone, I mean, you know.
That's good. And I mean, in terms of maybe last minute hacks, if you leave learning only one thing today, what do you want to leave with everyone? Like, what's a hack about networking, or what's one thing that you want everyone to remember if they forget everything else?
well, I said the C word, which is community. So as I said, I was 22, started up a group with friends. I made sure that we all either were attending events, learning together. We had hundreds of people that used to come to our events as well, and I was able to kind of foster and connect with many new people. I enjoyed that part of what we started. So there's obviously a group of you here today, and so I implore you to kind of build the community which you have today, and hopefully it spurs on other great things amongst yourselves.
Yeah, I agree. Like, find your tribe, and they'll stick with you, and you'll stick with them, and they'll be with you through, and you'll grow. I mean, it's a cliche. I married someone who I met at work, so our world is, and so many of my really good friends I met through working, and they've been, through my career, through the ups and downs, and having children and all that stuff. And they've changed. I've grown. There's more of them, but they've really got me through my career. So I think that, if anything, be open to the idea that having a group of people who understand where you're at, and they don't necessarily need to be in the same position as you. They can be older than you, and at some points they could be younger than you. But I think being open to being open is a really important thing. Just expose your fears a bit as well. Don't be frightened to sort of say, I'm finding this really challenging. And I know that this is what everyone says, but it's true that, mentoring has become much more common than when I was young. But you'll find that people are your mentors informally, and finding a support system that can help you at every stage is really, really, really important, because you will have a crisis, you will have a a crisis of confidence or not know what to do next, and those people will be the people that get you through.
Be yourself, ask questions. What's the worst that can happen? That'd be my advice.
I like that. And I think for me, it's, I think work on your personal brand. I know you've probably heard that a lot, but your personal brand is important. It doesn't have to be calculated or anything like that, but really kind of find the parallels that you actually care about, kind of what are your values. And you can remember those and lean back on those when you're communicating with others and you're getting to know others. And secondly, I'd say always do your homework. If you know you're going to be meeting someone, you know their name, do a bit of a search on them on LinkedIn, see if they post anything, like if Tommy went running this morning.
I'll talk to you about my split times if you want.
So things like that, because they're not only good conversation starters, but again, they'll be like, oh wow, she actually knew that I did running. Not in a creepy way. Don't scroll all the way back on Instagram and find photos of their dad on holiday and stuff like that. But if they posted something in the last kind of week or something that you could bring out in conversation, that always helps and it makes you a bit more memorable. But yeah, did anyone have any questions at all? I can't see past. Oh.
Hello, my name is Sean. I'm a student at University of Wales studying marketing finance. First of all, thank you, Sarah and Debra Smith for the partnership and for hosting the event. We all appreciate it and we're learning more and hoping that we can do it as well as yourself. As someone who wants to create like a real estate society, but also focus finance, I want to ask, how do you build relationships with firms and possibly get like partnerships?
I think it's funny because it's like a pyramid and but in reverse. So you'll meet one person that will offer to help you, and you'll find, I think people in the industry are actually very generous with their time and very willing to help. And I think that if you reach out, you'll be surprised how much how open people are, so it's that networking thing, like it just expands. And so I think it's a like little steps to begin with. Things like this are amazing, obviously, and what Sarah's doing, you know, that just opening a door, and then opening the next door, and I think that, and not giving up if you're rebuffed, you know, like being resilient and aim high. Do you know what I mean? Like as you said, you know, like the CEO of CBRE or Savills or Nightfront probably doesn't get many emails from people like you asking for a helping hand, if we're honest, day to day. And they will answer, you know. And so I just think that, you know, just go for it a bit. And, you know, when tomorrow they get like 50 emails from people, they'll be going, what the f***'s going on? But I think that, you know, just, you know, aim high and find someone that you have a connection with, and they will open all the doors that you need to be open for you, actually.
Yeah.
So I don't know if people know what build to rent is. I'm really interested in who knows about build to rent, because one of my bugbears is that we haven't done a very good job explaining it to the future renter.
It's the biggest growth area in the next 10 to 15 years.
We do a lot of work in that sector. It's just so you know, it's buildings that are built and they're rented out. The whole building is rented out by a professional, generally institutional landlord. So so you can stay as long as you want. You get good service. But they tend to be quite high end, which is the negative bit. But BTR News.
Yeah. And maybe one more question, and then you can just come and find us afterwards. Yeah.
Firstly, I would say thank you to the panel. A little round of applause, everybody.
Oh, thank you.
Who may not be as young as we've been in this room, but I always come to events like this to learn. One word I took away is community. It's such a powerful word. I've never used it. I work with Dan, who Tom was referring to, manager for a large sales team. Networking, one of some of the takeaways we take is, first of all, better to be interested rather than interesting. If you try and be interesting, it's actually quite scary. be interested in the person that you're speaking to. You know, it says on the neuro atypical, diverse, being dyslexic and ADHD, so an event like this would be quite scary, so I'm actually at my comfort zone right now. But you know, you've got to remember, everyone's here to meet people and learn from people, and it's all about answering questions. And one of the things we talk about when it comes to our sales team is, don't try and sell. Do you agree? It's not about selling. It's about finding out about who the person is.
Yeah.
I remember when I started my career in property, a long time ago. Thanks for the reminder. I got some feedback from my boss who met someone who said, "Yeah, I met this person. He's very salesy." And I took that away and actually had to unlearn about actually going to the networking events, about people meeting people, about who they are, not trying to sell what you do, whether it's a service, product, or whatever. And I throw it back. Do you agree that that's actually more important? Actually, building a relationship based on, oh, you've got children, so I've got children as well. Or, oh, I broke my arm the other day. Oh, so did I. You did. Rather than, oh, I do this and I do that and I can say this. That comes later.
Yeah.
Do you agree? And follow?
Yeah, so I used to work for a property company, so I had people sort of trying to sell their services to me. Before that, I was a property manager, and then I became an advisor and set my own business up. And there is nothing worse than someone coming towards you and you're just thinking, oh God, they're going to try. And I met someone, she's a developer actually, from Copenhagen, and we just got on. We met at a dinner. We happened to be sitting next to each other, and I really liked her. And she's in London quite a lot. So we arranged to go for a walk with the dog, and we went for a walk. We walked for about an hour and a half, and we went back to her house, and we sort of said, "Oh, it was great." And then she said to me, "So what do you actually do?" And I loved that, because as a business owner and wanting to grow a business, I'm very conscious of not being that salesperson. But we've become friends, and we've done a bit of work with her, and I think that connection that you make is it. You know, no one wants to be, walk into a shop, no one wants someone to come up to them and go, "Oh, can I help you?" And you look lovely in that. It's a subtle skill, and that's why retail is useful. But I think that, it's about building a rapport with someone. I feel really bad because someone really wanted to ask a question and she hasn't had a chance.
Oh,
I can't really hear you, sorry.
no, you can speak up. We just can't hear you.
No, go on.
No. What was the question?
That's success.
What led to my success? Sorry? Okay. Hard work and dedication, did you say? Yeah, that's definitely part of it. I made sure, certainly in the early part of my career, that I outworked everyone else. I had a love for learning. I also am quite competitive. I've got two younger brothers. We're split 2 years, 10 months. I'm the oldest. But my youngest one thinks he's the big man, but I'm still bigger than him. But I'm competitive, and I always liked the fact that. I always didn't like the fact that if I didn't know something, that someone has got one up on me. So something which I always do is, okay, that's a word I haven't heard before. Quietly go back, learn what that is, understand it. So that's been, I guess, my winning formula over my 10 years of my career.
I think for me, mine has always been. I don't really consider myself to be as successful as where I want to be just yet. Just as a disclaimer, but I think for me, I've never been an academic, so it's not really getting good grades is not something I could rely on throughout my life. So for me, I've always taken pride in being a doer. I like to watch people do things, or I like to put myself in uncomfortable situations to try and learn that thing. And I think that has been what has contributed to me scaling the Land Collective from where it started, because it literally started at my university, in my student accommodation. Like, it was just a few people coming to chat about the property market, which sounds really, really boring, but it wasn't, I promise. But I just thought, okay, if I email CBRE about doing a joint event because they don't come to my uni, because we didn't offer property at the time, then they can either say yes or they can say no, or they can ignore it. I hope they don't ignore it, but if they do, then so what? And I'll ask somebody else. So I think for me, it was, just being a doer, but also having a bit of audacity, because realistically, I don't know, I feel like most people aren't going to tell you no when you're young as well. So I think you have your youth on your side, so take advantage of that as much as you can. And I think at the time I always kind of had the, oh my God, you started this and you're so young. So I really capitalized on that bit. So yeah, have audacity, because lots of other people do, and they're probably nowhere near as knowledgeable or as skilled as you guys. So yeah, just do that.
I'd say be really curious. Like, I mean, having a really good work ethic and being really curious goes a really long way.
The one for me is I always do what I say I'm going to do. If I've got a project, I tend to deliver. If I don't, I make a lot of sacrifices to make it happen. And if not, I'm always honest and transparent. And I think that's something in our world is not necessarily always a thing, as some people who've had experience with recruiters are. And you don't stay in the job as long as you can if you're not honest and transparent with people. And that's how I'd say. But again, similar to Sarah, I'm nowhere near finished. I'm only just starting.
Awesome. Okay, so we're gonna wrap up the panel now. So yeah, I think there's more food and drinks and stuff at the back. So yeah, if you have any other questions, come and find us. We'll be around this evening. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed that panel. Thank you.